scourge of terrorism. And there's one country which has been on the receiving end of the scourge of terrorism, it is Pakistan. Yet the other country, which is the source of terrorism in Pakistan, continues to play the drum of being the victim of terrorism. I mean, it's a remarkable world, right? It's a very interesting proposition that we find ourselves in. Now, coming back to the Lahore incident, it is a clear evidence of a terrorist attack which was planned, which was supported by India, which was to target innocent civilians in Pakistan, Lahore, Johor town. It reflects India's persistent hostility towards my country and the use of terrorist proxies to achieve nefarious objectives. And we believe objectives which are actually going to harm them also. Because when you try and burn the neighbor's house, the fire will come and burn you too. Our professional law enforcement agencies and judicial authorities have brought the perpetrators of this attack to justice, who have received punishment, but these are only the frontmen, as we all know. The masterminds and the facilitators remain at large and under Indian state patronage and protection. I can assure you that the government of Pakistan will pursue this relentlessly at every level. Now, India has already earned the infamy for its terrorist designs and actions. Its actions in the IIOJK, the infamous massacre in Indian Gujarat, which made some countries close its door on many well-known Indian leaders, and which still ensures that many other Indian leaders still continue to glorify this incident. They want to identify with that incident rather than away from the incident. This shows the psyche which is currently going on, and I tell you, it's a dangerous one. The Samjhota train incident that we all know about, its terrorist proxies continue to use neighbors' territories and blatant support to Baloch militant organizations. All of these point to one objective and one method. The objective is to undermine Pakistan's peace and security, and the method is simple: terrorism. Now, we can call what India is doing to be many things, okay? I think, fragment of a sentence which describes it well is chronic terrorism syndrome, okay? And how do you define it? You perpetrate terrorism, you fully supported and abetted by the state. The Lahore incident, the Samjhota train incident, the Yadev evidence all point out to that. You play as a victim of terrorism to gain international sympathy and create subterfuge. No country has used terrorism better than India. To play on the back of the attention of the world on terrorism and to play the victim, no country has benefited from it better than India. Portray yourself or itself as the champion of counterterrorism. And it's interesting because this continues to be a country which has made no contribution whatsoever to, has always played lip service, but made no contribution to international counterterrorism in any way. If you compare Pakistan and India, you will find Pakistan always be in the forefront of counterterrorism, of ensuring that we are a player in the world to try and make sure that terrorism does not continue to haunt us. It also continues to divert international attention from its state-sponsored terrorism and human rights violations in the IIOJK. It blatantly violates international laws and regulations to continue terrorist activities and their support, facilitation, and financing. Maybe it will not be very wise to bring it in this context, but allow me to remind all of you that India is a country which continues to be what I call a rogue state. Because the country that tries to deny the existence of Security Council resolutions and insists on other countries imagining a certain part of disputed territory as its own shows what type of a mindset this country has. And I can say, of course, it's a very, very dangerous mindset. Create hurdles in judicial proceedings when terrorism cases are sub judice. Paralyze United Nations Security Council. And this is also very rich because, do what you blame others for. Okay? So India has been consistently paralyzing United Nations Security Council's sanctions regime by blocking listing of Indian terrorists actively aided and financed by the state of India. And in this, I have 4 names that I can share with you, I think at the end of this, which are recent Indian nationals whose listing has been blocked by India. In fact, I do have those names with me. This is Gobinda Patnaik, Parthasarthi, Rajesh Kumar, and Mr. Dungara. All 4 names blocked by India in UNSC listing. And obviously, I think I don't need to remind anyone that India has had a constant role in destabilizing its neighboring countries and weaken their economies to try and pursue its hegemonic designs in the region. CPEC, Balochistan are very good examples. I also question, I can just try and remind India that you cannot have islands of excellence in a sea of depravity. So when you try and harm your region, you actually end up harming yourself. Now, we can understand that India is currently very frustrated because Pakistan has been, because of the delisting of Pakistan from FATF's grey list, right? They have completely mastered the art of using international organizations for their political gains. I think they should give lessons on that type of diplomacy to the world. Now, this cannot change the fact that India remains the recruiter, the financier, the facilitator of various terrorist outfits and foreign terrorist fighters within the region. The world may be ignoring this, what I would consider to be a festering pool of terrorism, but at its own peril. Now, what is ironic, as I've already said, is that India has been beating the terrorism drum, chairing UNSC meetings on terrorism. Now, it has been caught red-handed in this particular incident, orchestrating terrorist attacks in its neighboring country, Pakistan. Let me be clear to you, and as I've already said, when you burn your own neighbor's house, the fire will reach you too. I think India should desist from this policy and start looking at this region as the neighborhood that it is. India's unabated slip into the abyss of extremism is being clouded by this growing India, emerging India narrative. And let me conclude by saying, because you might be asking, what is the, yes, this is all the evidence, the dossier is there, but what is the purpose? We believe truly that the international community, in particular the UN and FATF, have the responsibility now to hold India accountable for its terrorist actions. So we are looking for accountability. The Lahore incident for us is a test case for the credibility and integrity of international counterterrorism and counter-financing of terrorism regimes. The world must show that efforts to counter terrorism are non-discriminatory. The international conscience cannot be held hostage to what are clearly political and economic exigencies of the time. I also want to draw the world's attention to the victims who lost lives or were injured in the Lahore terrorist incident, as well as their families and loved ones. They look towards all of us for justice. We have shared this dossier with the members of the United Nations Security Council. We are also sharing it with the UN Secretary General. We hope that they would look into this evidence and fulfill their responsibility. Pakistan, for its part, will remain fully committed to eradicate terrorism in all its form and manifestations. As far as this specific issue is concerned, I know you already know from the Interior Minister's briefing, but I will just repeat. Red warrants through Interpol have already been issued. Mutual legal assistance requests to countries whose territory has been used for this incident have been sought. And we are, as we already said, will be formally taking it up at the UN. We have shared the copies, are in the process of sharing the copies of the dossier with the Security Council members and the United Nations Security Secretary General. And our expectations of the world is that if this is allowed, because of India's growing, because of what we call the exigencies of political and economic interest, we will all have to pay the price for it. We will all have to pay the price for it. So with that.
Yes, please.
मैम अनुमति मस्जिद की तरफ से गुलभूषण यादव और फिर अभिनंदन और अभी ये जो मौजूदा हुआ है, तो क्या आपको उम्मीद है कि भारत को इन सब कुछ का सजा मिलेगा?
उम्मीद पे दुनिया कायम है, सॉरी। सो देखें, जो फैक्ट है वो ये है कि अगर कोई मुल्क एक दूसरे के ऊपर हम वो तो कह सकते हैं, एलिगेशन लगाना आसान है, ये मुल्क ये करता है ये, अगर एक मुल्क का एक एजेंट पकड़ा जाए, फिर वो पूरी तरह कह भी दे कि वो किसके एजेंडे पे आया था, किसका एजेंट था, और वो हाजिर सर्विस हो और वो निकल जाए और फिर भी दुनिया उसको तस्लीम ना करे या उसको क्वेश्चन, सो दैट वुड बी आयरॉनिक. सो हाँ, हमें इस पे उम्मीद है कि ये जो इनका ट्रेल ऑफ एविडेंस आता जा रहा है, मैंने भाई आपसे नाम नहीं लिया ना, आपने अब ये मौका दिया तो मैं इसका बताना चाहूँगी कि पिछले 3 सालों में 211 individuals of law enforcement agencies have been attacked through raw-sponsored attacks. There have been 1,213 attacks in Pakistan in the last 3 years where we have evidence that they were raw-sponsored. Now, if I take you to the list of the last, आप कह रहे हैं ना कि उम्मीद इसी चीज़ पे हो सकती है ना कि दुनिया को नज़र आ जाए, सामने आ जाए कि कितना ज़्यादा उनकी तरफ से ये होता जा रहा है. Now, attack on PC Hotel Gwadar, 11th May 2019. Attack on Chinese consulate Karachi, November 2018. Attack on oil exploration company at Gwadar, October 15th, 2020. Suicidal attack at Gwadar, 20th August 2021. Suicidal attack on FC camp at Panjgor Noshki, February 2022. Indian disinformation campaign we all know about. So really, my question is, how much is too much? And is this not too much? And how would we allow a country to drum the terror, to use the terrorism drum on a platform like the Security Council? And how do we deny, then questions are asked about the credibility of these institutions, of course. So I think this is clearly a very serious matter, and real questions need to be asked.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Minister साहब, मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगी राशना सियाल अब तक से पुलवामा अटैक हो जाए, पठानकोट हो जाए या मुंबई अटैक्स हो जाते हैं, तो पाकिस्तान के ऊपर जिस तरीके से इंडिया की जानिब से जो एक केस, स्ट्रॉन्ग केस बनाया जाता है इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे, फिर फैक्टर में भी पाकिस्तान को क्रिटिसाइज करके जिस तरीके से ब्लैकमेल किया जाता है या प्रेशराइज किया जाता है, जो आपने एक पूरी सिलसिले बताए जो अटैक्स इंडिया ने किए पाकिस्तान में, क्या वजह है कि हम उस तरीके से अपना केस नहीं लड़ सकते? हमारा डिप्लोमेटिक फेलियर है या क्या वजह है? फैटफ के अंदर हम इंडिया को लिस्टिंग क्यों नहीं करवा सकते हैं? एक तो ये जानना चाहूँगी. सेकेंडली, इससे हटके आपका रिसेंटली अफगानिस्तान का विजिट हुआ और उस विजिट के हवाले से भी कुछ बात हुई कि वहाँ पर आपकी जो मीटिंग्स थी हाई ऑफिशियल्स के साथ वो नहीं हो सकी हैं. इसमें किस हद तक सदाकत है कि एक खातून वज़ीर ख़ारजा के जाने से शायद वहाँ कोई मसाइल हुए? ये एक इम्प्रेशन है और नेशनल असेंबली में भी इस पे बात हुई है, तो इस पे आपका मौक़िफ़ जानना चाहूँगी. शुक्रिया.
Okay. Again, I will not entirely agree with, I will speak in English because, I will not entirely agree with the fact that we have not been able to make a case. Okay. As I said, and I repeat, and I say this because as someone who's been associated with foreign policy management for many years now, I would have wished, I would have hoped 10 years back that 10 years from then, we'd be looking at a different region. That we'd be looking at a region which was at least moving towards opening doors towards each other, for its people, towards prosperity. But we see this continuation of trying to, bog the region down with the scourge of terrorism, right? Now these incidents, the fact that you have Yadav here, all these are clear signs of a very large country trying to dampen the entire region through its, what I would consider nefarious designs, right? I don't think these designs are good for India also, because India is also part of the neighborhood. It should want the prosperity of the neighborhood. Now that thought process is something that you can't change, that we would like to be able to change. So if you see in the last 5 to 10 years, India has changed tactics and become much worse than it used to be, where it is now propagating, extremism in some ways, and propagating against certain minorities. What it did in IIOJK, what it did for its own elections, sent jets into one nuclear power, sending jets into another nuclear power. Do we need evidence of more irresponsible behavior for the world? That's evidence enough. And then we all found out what was in there, in Balakot, which was told, the world was told that there were certain camps, etc., and we found there were some trees. That's it. Do we need more evidence as to what country is doing what? So I think that case is well made. I don't think it is. But as I said, there is the reality, and I'm not, I'm clearly saying this. There are political and economic exigencies which are making some entities look away from obvious things. We decided that we are not going to take any other questions, but that नहीं, एक मिनट, अफगानिस्तान के ऊपर अफगानिस्तान के ऊपर नहीं लेना था, लेकिन क्योंकि ये क्लैरिफिकेशन देने का मौका मिल रहा है, इसलिए मैं ये क्वेश्चन बिल्कुल लूँगी. देखें, पहले तो हमारा एक असूल है, मैं ये एंड आई एम यूजिंग दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी, थैंक यू फॉर गिविंग मी दिस. हम दफ्तर खारजा हैं, ठीक है. स्पोक्स पर्सन दफ्तर खारजा को रिप्रेजेंट करती हैं. हम सारे यहाँ पे जो लोग बैठे हैं वो आला अफसरान दफ्तर खारजा के हैं. उनका मैंडेट सोशल मीडिया मैनेजमेंट नहीं है. उनका मैंडेट हुकूमत पाकिस्तान के लोगों के इंटरेस्ट को प्रिजर्व करना और अपनी जॉब करना है. सो प्लीज गिव अस इफ वी कंसिडर दैट टू बी अ सेकेंडरी जॉब, नॉट द. सो वी आर लेस केयरफुल अबाउट द, कहते हैं ना, तमाशा दैट इज गोइंग ऑन इन सोशल मीडिया, एंड मोर केयरफुल अबाउट द मैसेजिंग दैट वी डूइंग टू द पीपल दैट वी वांट, दैट इज आवर जॉब टू इंटरेक्ट विद. सो बहुत सारी चीज़ें ऐसी होती हैं जिनको हम इग्नोर कर देते हैं, जो एक डिसइंफॉर्मेशन कैंपेन चल रही होती है. लेट मी कैटेगोरिकली से, कोई ऐसी मीटिंग नहीं थी जो हमने मांगी हो जो हमें डिनाई की गई. तो वो एक आ रहा था कि जी अ सर्टेन मिनिस्टर रिफ्यूज टू मीट. वी वर देयर फॉर अ सर्टेन नंबर ऑफ आवर्स, वी कुड ओनली फिट इन अ सर्टेन नंबर ऑफ मीटिंग्स, एंड दैट देयर इज एब्सोल्युटली नो ट्रूथ इन दैट व्हाटसोएवर. इन फैक्ट, if you were to ask me what is my assessment, I was very well received, as I expected to be. There was no reason why I should not have been well received. The other thing is that as far as the meetings are concerned, or the purpose of the trip is concerned, I feel we were able to achieve exactly what we wanted to achieve, and I don't want to delve greater into details. मैंने पहले भी कहा है, please respect the fact that our job is to do, or at least the way Pakistan looks at diplomacy is that our job is to do deep, useful diplomacy away from theatrics. So हम नहीं visits पे जाके या meetings करके बाहर आके कहते हैं हमने उसको ये कह दिया, हमने उनसे ये करवा लिया, हमने ये कर दिया. ये हमारा तरीका नहीं है, और ना ही हम इस तरीक़ों को अपनाना चाहेंगे. हमारा तरीका ये है पाकिस्तान के इंटरेस्ट को प्रिजर्व करके, पाकिस्तान के जो भी इंटरेस्ट हैं उनको प्रोजेक्ट करने के लिए हमें जो करना पड़े वो हम करते हैं. कभी हम उसको सामने लेके आते हैं और कभी हम उसको बिल्कुल सामने नहीं लाते, क्योंकि सामने लाने से शायद उसका फ़ायदा नहीं नुकसान होगा. ठीक है.
फिर अच्छा सर.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the clarification. My question is, when on one side of our borders, India is sponsoring terrorism, the other side of the border, we are under perpetual state of firing, and many innocent Pakistanis, they are being killed. But why still the world is silent? Why still the world is not standing with us? This dossier, as you are speaking today, I heard 3-4 dossiers of the same kind in the past. What happened with the dossiers? What would be a different happening with this dossier?
देखिए, पहले तो मैंने आपको पूरा एक्शंस का बता दिया कि हम इसमें क्या क्या करने जा रहे हैं. रेड वारंट्स इशू हो गए हैं, म्यूचुअल लीगल असिस्टेंस की हमने रिक्वेस्ट दे दी हैं. ये एक ऐसा केस है जो कि पहले भी डॉसियर्स वर ऑब्वियसली बेस्ड ऑन एविडेंस. ये एक ऐसा केस है जिसमें अनडिनाइबल एविडेंस है ऑफ नॉट ओनली स्टेट स्पॉन्सरशिप बट propelling, जिसको कहते हैं mastermind sitting under state patronage, continuing to enjoy state patronage. All cases are very good cases. This is a particularly unique case where nobody, it seemed, tried to even hide what they were trying to do, right? So this is the strongest evidence that there could be. I think we look towards the region, we took towards the world, to see reality for what it is, and to try and discourage a very large country, which could, frankly speaking, play a role of bringing peace and prosperity to the entire region, to not to be a harbinger of that, and not to become a perpetrator of terrorism and the face of terrorism in the region. Right? This is all we can see. However, let me also say that when it comes to managing your border areas, and when it comes to making sure that they're peaceful, we will also do whatever we need to make sure that Pakistan's security is always seen to be before anyone else's. Pakistan will never compromise on what is its own red lines. Pakistan is also very cognizant of the fact that we want to engage with everyone in a way that we'd rather find mutual solutions. Right? I think we're in the process of engaging very deeply with all entities to be able to do that. So it's, I can tell you that security of whether it's our diplomats, or other personnel in foreign missions here, or people, civilians also, because I think एक मैं इस पे ये बिल्कुल कहना चाहूँगी, बहुत एक आम तासुर है कि जी civilians हो गए शहीद तो it's okay. Of course it's not okay. एक पाकिस्तानी शहीद होना कहीं पे हमारा, हमने उसको end तक, and we have to make sure that an incident like that never happens again. जो नुकसान हो गया उसको तो वापस नहीं ला सकते. But we take this very, 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 strongly, strictly, and take it very seriously.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Representing television. So, a little bit with a different angle, with the angle Mr. Praja asked a question. So, with a different angle, what happened with the previous dossiers with the UN? That the copies were shared, and copies were also shared with State Department, with the top US officials. But we know the Americans do not listen to the Pakistani narrative. Number one, what strategy you are evolving this time to effectively present a Pakistani narrative on Indian terrorism? What strategy you are adopting? Your lobby in Washington is weak, your lobby in UN is weak. And second, the previous dossier when it was presented, we were told that Pakistan is also considering to present it somewhere in a formal tribunal or a court of law for a formal punishment. So, what international law says, are you considering to take up this with some international tribunal, crimes tribunal, or some international court of justice, so that the issue could be formally, legally under international law, because Indian state terrorism is being committed and that has been established. So it becomes a full-fledged case against state of India. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. That was a very, very detailed question, and just to say, I'm very used to hearing Mateen Haider from Dawn News, so it seems a bit... Acha. So, international tribunals, no, we don't. I can't say yes or no. We have decided clearly. Okay? It's very clear. When you say you have shared it with this, and what was the use? What was the use? The use was that everybody is more well informed than before. The use is that everybody knows that there is undeniable evidence of a certain country's being a sponsor of terrorism while it continues to drum. Let's not discount the exigencies of economic and political interests. They are always in play in realpolitik. Okay? Let's not deny that. Let's accept that as a reality. However, has that had no impact? Of course it has had an impact. I feel that the sharing of the previous dossiers has also had an impact. And as far as asking, Keji, what is your strategy and your lobbying is weak, I'd rather my lobby be weak but my case be strong. Okay? I think it's important that we don't want to spend resources on marketing the case. We want the case. We want Pakistan to be a strong country which is itself, discounts any or requirement for any lobbying. And I think today I will slightly at least disagree with you and to say that nobody is listening to Pakistan. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we see a lot of openings within Europe, within the US. As you know, the foreign minister is currently in fact, he had gone specifically to participate in New York in the UN Security Council and in the G77 Development Ministers meeting. And from that platform also, he would be raising this issue, the foreign minister himself, right? And then, of course, he will have whatever sideline meetings in DC. So this is going to be a consistent, persistent effort, okay? But let me say this again. I would rather that a country like mine not have to waste its energy in these efforts and would rather use its efforts towards regional connectivity, towards prosperity, towards projects which are for mutual peace and prosperity rather than projects which have to show how the other has been a perpetrator of terrorism in my country. So we would hope that this will just, that the mindset would change, that the actions would change. But if we if we're forced to, because of these actions, then of course it is our job to make sure that the world knows of what's happening over here.
Here,
I think I'll just try that.
second.
मैडम लोकमान शाह डेली अस्कार से ये बताएं कि अभी आप अफगानिस्तान गई हैं, वहाँ पे जो इंडिया के तरबियती मराकज़ थे क्या इस हवाले से उनसे बातचीत हुई है, मुकम्मल खत्म हो गई या अभी भी वो मौजूद है? दूसरा ये कि इंडिया कोई बालाकोट जैसा ड्रामा करने के मूड में इस बारे में इतलाफ है?
Supplementary.
ये अली हुसैन रिपोर्टर से India have been using Afghan style terrorism in Pakistan. अब चूंकि तालिबान वहाँ पे हैं, एक साल से ज़्यादा हो गया ऐसा, क्या दोजियर है इसमें या आपके यहाँ या हमारे यहाँ कोई एविडेंस है कि अफगान साइड अभी भी जो है टेररिज्म के लिए पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ यूज हो रही थी? थैंक यू.
Okay, so एक और supplement.
Thank you very much, sir. जैसे अभी आपने अपनी स्टेटमेंट में भी कहा है कि ये बड़ी स्ट्रॉन्ग डोजियर हैं जो इस वक्त आप इंटरनेशनल कम्युनिटी और यूनाइटेड नेशन के जो सेक्रेटरी जनरल बुलाना चाह रहे हैं, इन तमाम हालात के बावजूद क्या आप समझते हैं पाकिस्तान भारत के माबैन जो तल्कात वो नार्मल हो जाएंगे? क्योंकि अभी तक तो स्टेट टेररिज्म की हमारे बल्किस्तान के अंदर पूरे पाकिस्तान में अगर इस केस की बात करें, इसकी प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस हो रही है तो उसमें भी एक थर्ड कंट्री जो है जिसके अंदर ये सारा कुछ बनाया गया, वहाँ पे पाकिस्तान के कुछ कैदियों को वहाँ से रिहा करा के फिर उनको इस्तेमाल यहाँ पे किया गया। एक जो रिलीजियस डिग्निटी जिसको इंटरनेशनल बैन किया गया और उसके बाद वो टारगेट थे। तो क्या इस हवाले से, क्योंकि ये सिलसिला जब से पाकिस्तान बना है, पाकिस्तान और इंडिया के माबैन क्या रिलेशन इस सिनेरियो में बहाल किए जा सकते हैं?
देखिए, okay, no more supplementaries. They cannot be supplementaries. This is a full-fledged question. We will come back to that. So this is somewhat connected, but it's not really connected, right? But just let me say that I think the lack of attention of the world on the direction and the slip that India has made is dangerous not only to my region, but to the entire world. Because this is a nuclear-armed country which does not desist from attacking another nuclear-armed country or sending fighter jets into another nuclear-armed country for political designs for electioneering. This is a serious matter, right, which is not currently on the mainframe of world concern, but the direction that India has taken has an impact right now in its own neighborhood only, but soon the impact will be felt in a wider neighborhood, I feel. And this evidence of that direction is everywhere. India was known for its secular values. Now what is India known for? For only being a country which is meant for a certain religious followers, where all other religious followers would be, frankly speaking, persecuted and Citizenship Amendment Act, this, that, the other. What they did in IIOJK, okay, and then to expect that everybody can just happily forget that there are Security Council resolutions on Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so these are all. So you can make as many narratives as you want, but the reality of the region or the reality of geography and the reality of the fact that there is a disputed territory in which India has been openly, killing, maiming, using rape as a tool of state policy and doing all of that, those are realities that cannot be ignored. And sometimes they do find themselves on the cover of New York Times and other magazines, right? And if you, so that's what it is. But अगर आपके सवाल का जवाब ये भी हो सकता है कि 10 years from today, where do we want this region to be, right? I think it is a matter of not pride for me to say that we had more chance of removing some of the problems that we have with our neighboring countries 10 years back than we have today. That's not very complimentary on the direction that India has taken, right? So वो आपका सवाल का हो गया. दूसरा आपने बोला कि देखिए, as far as this dossier is concerned, this particular dossier is focused on this Lahore incident, on the Johor Town incident. So किसी ने पूछा कि foreign soil इस्तेमाल, this is completely focused on that. और बाकी आपने कहा कि बालाकोट जैसा इंसिडेंट दोबारा कर सकते हैं. अब देखें, मैंने जैसे कहा, आई थिंक इनके सवाल में मैंने आपके सवाल का भी जवाब दे दिया कि जो ये कर सकते हैं वो कुछ भी कर सकता है. जब आपको एविडेंस मिल गया है कि वहाँ कुछ भी नहीं था और इंडिया ने फिर भी इस तरह का किया, इलेक्शन तो थोड़ी देर पहले, उस दिन का इलेक्शन रिजल्ट भी उनके लिया गया. So that just shows you that this is why I call it a rogue state. They're willing to take any type of adventurism and chances to be able to have political interests met. So this is obviously very, very problematic.
Anas Malik.
Sorry. Honorable Minister. It's a two-part question, specifically focused on the issue. First being that previously we've seen such dossiers being done.
Yes.
Predecessor. On the 14th of November 2019, we saw BGIS, the then BGIS and your predecessor addressing a press conference over here, putting out a dossier on India's involvement through Afghanistan, in Pakistan. Then this last year as well, when this last happened, we saw the then NSA address a press conference with the then DM minister and saying the exact same things which we're hearing a year and a half on. So first is why now, and is the dossier diplomacy actually working, or are there no new ideas, because previously we've seen that this diplomacy or this policy has not really worked out. Thank you.
Okay, I think you have a very good point, but allow me to disagree, because I do not think there's a dossier diplomacy happening here at all. At all. I am very against anything which is, which is not rare. Okay, simple. So I would not at all call it dossier diplomacy. I think what it is evidence being shared on a certain country's activities within the region. That same certain country continues to project itself, as I said. It's a remarkable feat that they've been able to accomplish. Remarkable. I think we should learn from them. Because being the biggest perpetrators of terrorism, India, with hard, solid evidence which is available to us in many, many forms, and what more evidence do you want than their own, agent being caught red-handed? And then all of this evidence which is in this dossier also and in the previous dossiers. But that perpetrator of terrorism continues to play the victim card to the best of its availability. And the more terrorism it perpetrates, the more victim it projects itself. Because right now, you've seen an upswing in the Indian projection of themselves as the victims of terrorism. However, all the acts of terrorism have been happening in Pakistan. So one is asking the question, we cannot be blind to evidence. So what we want is, through these dossiers, I would not at all call it dossier diplomacy, I would call it evidence-based information sharing. Okay, that's what it is. I don't think we seek anything more than that. What we seek is, when you keep on giving the same information, this is not the same information, this is different incidents, different role that they have played in different places, all having one common theme, terrorism. Right? So this is just sharing evidence, sharing information on what India has actually been up to. Now, that may not immediately change somebody's reaction. There are many exigencies which are at work, but it at least puts the record straight. And I think there are many entities, many countries which are fully cognizant of it. Okay, so that's what it is. Why now? Because now, as I said, are you questioning the state that we're in? No, simply. I can tell you why now. Because we have gone through the stage of issuing red warrants. Okay, so we are at a stage where the first perpetrators, the people who were used, have already been given punishment. The ones who were facilitators, we have been able to ask for mutual assistance, mutual legal assistance, and issue red warrants. But the masterminds still remain under state patronage. That's why now we are at stage 2, and we want to get to stage 3. This will have to be the last question. We have the Tajikistan president.
तीन लोगों के रेड वारंट्स जारी हो चुके हैं, 3 के प्रोसेस में और 3 को पीओ डिक्लेयर किया गया है। ये 3 नो इंडियन सिटीजन। आप वैसे पर्सनली समझती हैं कि जितनी भी एक्सरसाइज है, इंडिया इन लोगों को पाकिस्तान के हवाले कर देगा इंटरपोल के थ्रू, या इस तरह से एक ये बताइए कि इस एक्सरसाइज का क्या नतीजा निकलेगा। दूसरा ये बताइए कि अफगानिस्तान में आप गई, वहाँ पे जो भी ये चीज़ें होती हैं, तो हम कंसिस्टेंट हमारा एक व्यू रहा है कि हिंदुस्तान अफगानिस्तान से बैठ के पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ कार्रवाई करना। और अभी जो रिसेंट वेव आई है KPK टारगेट किलिंग की और टेररिज्म की, 115 पुलिस वाले 11 माह में मारे गए हैं, इसी तरह 1000 से ज़ायद अटैक हुए हैं। तो इनमें कोई ये नजर आया आपको कोई रॉ या इंडिया उधर से बैठ के यहाँ पे कर रहा है? और आखिरी एक लाइन में कि अभी आपका छोटा सा टेन्योर रह गया नवंबर तक इस गवर्नमेंट का, इस सारे मामले में कि हमने उनको कह दिया, वो हम पे उल्टे सीधे इल्जामात हिंदुस्तान भी लगाता है, और हमने तो ये एविडेंस के साथ ये बात कर दी, कोई रे ऑफ होप आपको फॉरेन मिनिस्टर नजर आती है कि हम कोई रिज्यूम कर सकेंगे कि ये मामला खत्म हो और दोनों ममालिक पीस टॉक्स रिज्यूम कर सकें?
नहीं, नो सप्लीमेंट्री. हाँ, इसका सवाल का सप्लीमेंट्री. ही डिजर्व्स अ करेक्ट आंसर. I will, Mateen, much as you are obviously very, very respectable and a senior journalist, etc., we just have to be fair, right? I will speak to you separately on this, okay? Acha, will India give these people over? We would hope, as a claimant of wanting to follow rules, processes, legal systems, clearly India would, right? Why would it not? And that is what we should consider from a responsible country. Is India a responsible country? I think that's a question that India has to answer. So my question is India a responsible country through these? Now, again, I think you have to be. I'm going to once again use this opportunity. पहले मैं आपके आखिरी सवाल का पहले जवाब दूंगी और आपने जो बीच वाला सवाल किया उसका बाद में. पॉलिसी स्टेट की होती है, पाकिस्तानी लोगों की इंटरेस्ट की होती है. I would expect enough maturity in the Pakistani political system to do whatever we've started, which is good, to be carried forward. And I think that's why I believe in a very strong institution in the form of the Foreign Office, because it is institutions like this which continue to guide and take guidance from political and dispensations. And I believe this institution is one which has been able to carry that mantle forward. Governments will come and governments will go, and governments will inshallah in future continue to पूरी अपनी term करें, but state policy is guided by state's interest. And I think that आज मैं हूँ, हमने बहुत सारा काम कोई हमें जो अच्छा लगा हम उसको फॉरवर्ड लेके गए. इस्लामोफोबिया पे उन्होंने अच्छा काम किया, हम उसको आगे लेके जा रहे हैं. सो जो हमें अच्छा, सो दैट आई वोंट बी कंसर्न अबाउट हम जब तक हैं ये ऑफिस चलेगा और उसके बाद नहीं चलेगा. हमारे बाद भी चलेगा और हमारे से पहले भी चलता रहे और बहुत अच्छा चलता रहे. ओके, नाउ आप कह रहे हैं कि क्या आपको रे ऑफ होप नजर आती है. देखिए, मैं आपको एक सिंपल बात, एंड आई विल से दिस, आई थिंक इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट टू ब्रिंग सम रियलिटी to how we conduct policy. I went to India as the first foreign minister of Pakistan who was born after the 1971 war. When I went to India, I said that we would hope that this process that we've started is not something that can be, that it cannot be stopped at any time, that that no forces will be able to stop this process now, that we will continue to make gains. कभी ज़्यादा गेंस कर लेंगे, कभी कम करेंगे, बट एक मूवमेंट चलती रहेगी. एंड वी पुट आवर नेक ऑन द लाइन, आवर पॉलिटिकल नेक ऑन द लाइन, टू से MFN स्टेटस इंडिया को देना चाहिए, इंडिया के साथ ट्रेड नॉर्मलाइजेशन किया एक ताल्लुक शुरू हो जाना चाहिए. क्योंकि हमारा मकसद क्या था कि इंडिया के साथ जो हमारे बास्केट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स हैं उनमें भरने के बजाय उनको हमें आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ख़त्म करना चाहिए. नाउ व्हाई वर वी एबल टू डू ऑल ऑफ दैट? Because on the other side, we had the person of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who wanted his legacy as a peace builder, who wanted his legacy to say कि हम सियाचिन को mountain of peace में convert करना चाहते हैं, right? You need a player on the other side who's sending messages. Now, in the last 10 years, what messages has India sent to Pakistan? Do you want to go through the list of messages? Balakot, fighter jets, IIOJK. What messages has sent internally to its own people? Now the world can turn a blind eye to it. Unfortunately, we can't turn, because we are on the receiving end of this hegemonic, benevolent behavior of a very large country which also happens to be a nuclear state. Now, when everybody talks about threat perception, and you're seeing this a lot in the Indo-Pacific strategy and that arena. Now, can you imagine the threat perception of a country like Pakistan being a neighbor of India and having gone through Balakot and having gone through all the other things which have happened, having gone through the Lahore incident? Do you think we have no right to feel threatened? Okay, so where we are today, we would hope that this ray of hope that you talk about is, that we will see a rainbow one day. And unfortunately, I'm unwilling to lose more decades. कितनी generations? किस चीज़ को पालना है? Hostility को पालना है पूरी ज़िंदगी? ये तो हमारे इंटरेस्ट में नहीं है ना. बट क्या इस वक्त आपके पास कोई ग्लिमर ऑफ होप है? मुझे एट मच You know, because I was a very, if you ask me, I will take the first opportunity that comes. But I was a pragmatist, I have to tell you. I don't see a glimmer of hope right now. We see a different message tomorrow, we'll be the first ones to let you know.
Thank you very much. We'll
किसका? अच्छा, अफगानिस्तान वाली बात देखिए, मैं एक और बात आपको बताती हूँ. मैंने ये लकली एक होता है ना, एक आपकी बेंच भी उस तरह होती है. But one thing that I've learned from conducting diplomacy, I'd rather conduct diplomacy than talk about the diplomacy that we do, right? So I choose the conducting of diplomacy, which requires you to keep quiet more than to speak. Okay?
Thank you very much.
वज़ीर मुमलिकत बराए ख़ारजा हिना रब्बानी खर की इस्लामाबाद में प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस आपने मुलाहिज़ा की. रब्बानी खर गुफ्तगू कर रही थी. उन्होंने कहा कि भारत से ज़्यादा किसी ने दहशतगर्दी का फ़ायदा नहीं उठाया. भारत खित्ते में दहशतगर्दी की मुताद्दिद तंजीमों की मुआवनत और मदद करता रहा है. भारत को इस पॉलिसी से पीछे हटना होगा. तवक्को है कि बैनुल-अक़वामी बिरादरी भारत का एहतसाब करेगी. भारत की दहशतगर्दी के सबूत दुनिया को दे रहे हैं. अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा की सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल के अरकान से भारत को दिया गया डोसियर शेयर किया है. वाक़ई की तहक़ीक़ात के लिए मुतल्लिका ममालिक से बाहमी कानूनी मुआवनत की दरख्वास्त कर दी है. ये भी कहा उन्होंने कि भारत ने जौहर टाउन लाहौर में दहशतगर्दी की. अगर आप पड़ोसियों के घर में आग लगाने की कोशिश करेंगे तो आग आपके घर भी आएगी. वज़ीर मुमलिकत बराए ख़ारिजा हिना रब्बानी खर की प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ये बात भी उन्होंने की कि भारत से ज़्यादा किसी ने दहशतगर्दी का फ़ायदा नहीं उठाया. भारत खित्ते में दहशतगर्दी की मुताद्दिद तंजीमों की मुआवनत और मदद करता रहा है. भारत को इस पॉलिसी से पीछे हटना होगा. तवक्को का इजहार किया कि बैनुल-अक़वामी बिरादरी भारत का एहतसाब ज़रूर करेगी. भारत की दहशतगर्दी के सबूत दुनिया को दे रहे हैं. ये भी कहा हिना रब्बानी खर ने और कहा कि अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा की सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल के अरकान से भारत को दिया गया डोसियर शेयर किया है. वाक़ई की तहक़ीक़ात के लिए